What's up, everyone? It's Andy here. It's really great to see everyone again. It's been a long time. Obviously, as many of you guys know, I've been in Taiwan for the last 6 months or so. Was out there pretty much just traveling, seeing the family, exploring some new business opportunities, and relaxing. And now that I'm back in LA, it's definitely feels great to be back. I've been enjoying the weather and playing a lot more poker again. Recently at the Hustle Casino Live on August 5th, we played a very crazy session in which I was just making all the wrong decisions again, and resulted in a very big loss that day. Been getting a lot of messages asking me about my thoughts on some of the hands that I played that day, so I thought I'd go back and make a video and review some of these hands and share my thought process. So let's go ahead and look at some of these hands. Of course, I got to give a shout out first to Ryan Feldman and Nick Vertucci at Hustle Casino Live, as well as Sean Yabo at Hustle Casino and the entire ACL staff for making these games possible. Thank you. It's great to come back to right where I left off and jump right into the action. So the blinds that we were playing that day were 100, 200 with a 200 big blind ante and a $400 under the gun straddle. I pick up the Queen 8 offsuit in the hijack position. It folds around to me. I decide to raise to 1,000. It folds around to C3 double M in the big blind. He picks up pocket aces and 3-bets me to 3,200. At this point, the obvious play would be to fold, wait for a better situation, wait for a better hand. I think there's another option, which would be to re-raise. I think some of the benefits of doing that now would be to kind of set the game flow, also put his hand, whatever he's holding, in a tough spot this deep and out of position. And so I decided to go for the latter and 4-bet him to 12K. Definitely not a standard play here. I think I could probably use a lot of other better hands in this situation to do that with. Maybe a more connected and suited hand like Queen Jack suited, or maybe hands with an ace blocker or a king blocker. But I decided to gamble a bit and raise him right here with this one. So obviously when he calls a 12K, I'm not loving this situation. Queen 8 offsuit is a terrible hand to play post-flop. Usually when I make these kind of plays, it's purely to create a certain dynamic with that player. I do play with the same players over and over again, so I think sometimes it's good to throw him some curveballs. So from what I know about Double M, I played a bunch with him in the past. I think he's definitely more on the conservative side. When I 4-bet him to 12K and he calls the additional 8,800, I think a lot of his hands are some of the high pocket pairs, the high suited connectors, the high Broadway cards.
$10-8-7, not a super comfortable flop for pocket aces.
So the flop came out 7 of diamonds, 8 of spades, 10 of clubs, rainbow. This is actually a fairly decent flop for my hand, as I now have additional outs to outdraw him if he happened to have an overpair. Obviously, he could be holding pairs like 7s and 10s, in which I'd be in the worst shape. He could also have hands like ace king, ace jack suited and offsuit, and even hands like 9-10 suited. And I think with those hands, it definitely makes sense to bet my hand here to charge those hands and also to deny their equity. I think he also has hands like queens and jacks a lot. I thought that if he had hands like kings and aces, he'd be more incentivized to 5-bet those since he was out of position and we were playing very deep.
Andy fires 10K and Double M has a pretty easy call. Very safe turn.
The turn brings a deuce of diamonds, bringing in a backdoor diamond draw. He checks it over to me, and now I think I have a pretty big decision to make. I was unclear on the turn whether my hand was best. I think I have the option to check and try to get the showdown my pair of eights, hopefully try to win, or try to improve, hit a queen or trip eights. Or I could decide to bet here, and if he calls, follow that up with another giant bet on the river. I think there's hands that could still call on the turn that I could possibly be ahead of. Hands like ace jack of diamonds, a9 of diamonds. He definitely will be continuing with all the hands I'm behind. Pocket jacks, pocket queens, all the sets obviously in which I'm just dead. But I'm also blocking pocket eights as well as not blocking any of the flush draws that he could possibly be holding.
Maybe Double M has Queen Jack or something and Andy can just win with the 8, but usually probably the 8's not going to be enough to win this hand.
So I decide to go for 35,000. I think there are some hands that he could possibly continue on the turn and still fold to a river bet if he was unimproved. Think hands like 9-10 of diamonds, pocket jacks. My plan was pretty much to just blast any river that didn't bring a one-liner straight or a diamond.
And another fairly easy just call, I think, for double M.
How much are you playing? Like
300.
okay. You have 300 right there?
Yeah.
Does Andy want to put in a bet here? Try to move double M off something like pocket jacks.
The river came the 5 of hearts. It was a pretty big brick. The pot is now 114K. He checks it over to me. I think about it for a while and decide that an overbet would probably be the best play. It was going to put a lot of his one pair hands that arrive at this river in a very tough spot. And I decided to go for 150K overbet on the river. 150.
150,000 into 114,000. An overbet from Andy.
25. Obviously, at the time, I definitely didn't put him on aces, not even kings. I thought at best queens, from the way the hand played out. I think in his position, holding aces here, it's definitely not a snap call or an easy call. But from his perspective, like what hands is he losing to, right? He's losing to all my sets, my 2 pairs, but he's also winning against all my value bets. Like if I had queens or kings myself, would I play big pairs like this on the river? I think at least some of the times I might, if I was putting him on lesser 1 pairs to make a hero call.
But he does still have a really strong hand, and the turn and the river were pretty nice for him.
As you guys can see, my chips were fumbling and spilling everywhere. Probably made me look a lot more nervous. I think I was more annoyed at how slippery the chips were and not being able to stack them properly. I actually thought my bet was going to get through a lot of the times. When he started thinking this long and putting a lot of time chips in,
And double M makes the call and will win a $414,000 pot. Hard decision for double M, but he gets it right as Andy steps out of line with the queen 8 and bluffs 3 streets, including an overbet on the river. What a sick hand.
Eventually, to my surprise, he made the great call, and I was pretty shocked that he did. But when I saw his hand, it made sense. I think aces is just too good to fold here, and I don't think most players in this situation would fold aces from the way the hand played out. Perhaps I was a little bit too optimistic in trying to make him fold an overpair on this board and this run out. I think if he's holding jacks, queens, I thought at least some of the times he would be willing to fold those 1 pair hands facing this big river bet. But either way, it was very well played by him, a great slow play pre-flop, and yeah, just a great call by him at the end. All right, let's go ahead and look at the second hand.
1,000.
Now a real hand for Andy.
This second hand was very interesting. I pick up queens in the hijack, folds around to me. I raise it to 1,000. Han to my left in the cutoff has 6-5 suited, and he 3-bets me to 3,200. And now Garrett wakes up in the small blind with ace king of diamonds, and he 4-bets to 14,000, and he has us both covered. Now it's back to me, and I have a very, very interesting decision. From what I know about Han, from talking to him, he doesn't play that often, and he plays purely for recreation. Like some players will say that they're a recreational player, but they actually play a ton of poker, and they have a good grasp on the game. But I would say that Han is actually a true recreational player. With that said, I think I could put in the 5-bet here and isolate Garrett in position, but I think there's actually more incentive to let Han in behind and hope that he makes some mistakes post-flop. So I decide to flat that 14K, which I know makes my hand look extremely strong, expecting Han to either shove or flat as well, and which he chose the latter.
Almost $43,000 already in this pot. Interesting flop, nut flush draw for Garrett. Bottom pair and a gutter for Han, and an overpair for Andy.
The flop comes 8 of spades, 5 of diamonds, and 9 of diamonds. Garrett decides to check. With queens here, the obvious move would be to bet, protect against overcards, and charge a lot of hands that could continue that I'm ahead of. Here I decided to check. I thought there was a good chance that if Han had any piece of the board, he would just put it in. If he had any draw, he would just put it in. To my surprise and disappointment, Han checked back as well. The turn brings the 9 of clubs. Garrett checks again, and now I'm barely certain I have the best hand. I think now it's time I have to bet.
See if Andy goes for some value now.
25,000.
I bet 25,000.
About 60% pot.
On in.
To my surprise now, Han decides to move in for 65,900. I'm fully ready to call this bet, even though I think there's a reasonable chance that Han could have been slow playing a hand like 8s or 5s, but at the same time I'm still ahead of a ton of value hands that he might do this with, as well as all the draws.
Tricky spot for Garrett. I don't really see what he can do here.
65.
Now it's on Garrett, and he thinks about it for a while and decides to make the raise. So he raises Han's all-in bet of 65,000 to 101,000, and now I have a very interesting decision.
He makes it 101,000, and he is going to try to find a creative way to win this hand. I did not see that coming. Now what do you do with pocket queens? If Garrett had folded, I was going to say that Andy's decision is quite easy. He can just call against Han. But now that Garrett is raised, suddenly it's Andy who's in a really weird spot.
This was a very tough one to figure out. Like I said, I think Han might have been still playing some very nutted hands, so I have to be worried about not even being able to beat Han. Now with Garrett's raise, I wasn't really quite sure what this raise meant. I think it could mean two things, right? It could mean that he has a very, very strong hand. Probably not as frequently, but he could have some of the 9s that could be playing this way. He could have some of the full houses as well. I think the reason why he might choose to put in the raise now would be to build a pot with a very big hand. Get an extra value now from me in case I did have a big hand. He was out of position. If he decided to just call the 65,000, his hand was going to look very strong anyways, and it was unlikely that I would put any more chips in the pot on the river if he checked to me. But there's obviously the second interpretation of this raise, which is that he's not as strong as he's trying to appear to be, and that he has a marginal hand, but he thinks that he's ahead of Han but behind mine a good portion of the time. Han had one of the draws, and he wants to blow me off the best hand and go heads up with Han, increasing his chances to win. The toughest part was trying to figure it all out in that situation. I did have some time chips left, but I didn't want to use them in this particular spot because there was still a few more hours to go and we weren't going to get any refills on the time chips anytime soon. I just didn't think I was ahead of both of these players. You know, I thought there's a good chance that I might be ahead of Garrett, but I couldn't even be Han. Garrett did have a lot more money in play behind. There's still one more betting round. With those factors combined with the time pressure, I decided to make the fold.
What a weird hand. And it does brick out, and Han is going to win this pot.
As we can see here, the river came the 4 of hearts. Garrett misses, but it was a great attempt to take down the entire pot. He had a good chance to do so with his hand, but he did not get there. And Han wins a gigantic pot with a pair of 5s. This is just a very strange situation. We don't see this situation often when somebody is all in on the turn and there's a big side pot created, and so we're not used to knowing what the right decision is. Obviously it was disappointing. Sometimes that's the way poker works. Like I said, there's just so many crazy hands from that session. These were just 2 of them. Definitely recommend you guys to go back and watch that episode. The game was wild. There was like a huge pot with kings against aces. The king came on the turn. There was so much fireworks. You know, for some reason that day I made so many bad folds that day. I got bluffed repeatedly, thinking that nobody would try to bluff me, but I was making all the wrong decisions. Definitely a lot for me to learn from as well, looking back at it. But the good news is that we'll be looking forward to playing a lot more high stakes Fridays on the Hustler moving forward. So definitely be tuning in then. And if you guys have any interesting comments on these hands you want to add or share, feel free to comment below. And I'll see you guys soon.